Do you know that when you call me from Facebook, it says Big Worm is calling?
Is that what my name is?
I guess so. I don't know.
Okay, now the episode we're doing today is it's like a very specific, strange story about two people living together, like flatmates or roommates, as you would call them in America.
Mm-hmm.
And it just struck me that we lived together for a number of years, and I'm just wondering what that experience was like for you, because I think most of our listeners just know the fact that I once cracked an egg on your head. So I think people feel that I'm probably a terrible person to live with, but I'm wondering what your memories are of living with me.
Mm. I really loved living with you. I thought it was great. Yeah.
Oh, that's so...
I miss living with you, actually.
Oh,
Why are you laughing?
I was expecting you to insult me or something, but that's so nice. What was good about living with me? Am I quite sort of easy to get on with? Am I a pushover? What made me good to live with?
I just enjoyed living with my friend and having like debriefs about the day every now and then, and having someone who can just hang out with who's like across the hallway. I mean, it wasn't great when you cracked the egg on my head. That was the low point of living with you.
Was there anything that I did when we were housemates that was annoying or frustrating to you?
Not necessarily annoying. You weren't always great at picking up after yourself, but you don't. No. I actually can't remember. I don't have any specific bad memories. Like if I had to give an interview for you for like a respective new house, I wouldn't have anything bad to say. But I do remember that there would be times when I'd be working in my room and I'd have the door shut, and I'd know that you were bored and wanted attention because you'd start stomping down the hallway outside my closed door. And you'd hear you just like sort of walking at a normal pace. And then as you got closer to my door, you'd slow down and really start stamping your feet. And I guess that's how I knew you wanted some attention.
Yeah, because I was bored and I did want attention, and it was a subtle way to alert you that I was around, and
It was not subtle.
I'm David Farrier, a New Zealander accidentally marooned in America, and I want to figure out what makes this country tick. Now, occasionally on the show, I want to take some darker, weirder deep dives into America, stories that are more specific, niche, and dangerous. Stories that say something about this country, how we get along, and how sometimes we don't. Now, I think I've always been attracted to stories about unconventional people living together. I guess this is because so many people, myself included, have had these experiences of having to live with someone out of necessity, of having a roommate so you can make the rent each week, or maybe a boarder so you can keep up with mortgage payments. And because of this, we end up co-inhabiting these spaces with people who often start off as strangers before one of three things can happen. We become really good friends with them, we stay sort of strangely aloof the whole time and just put up with each other, or sometimes we don't get on and things go wrong. Today, a story about two strangers who ended up living together. Things go well until they don't. One is called Noah, the other we'll call Spaceman Barry. There's no murder, but there is a death. I first told the story a few months ago to people who subscribe to my weekly newsletter Webworm, but I thought I'd share it today here on Flightless Bird. So, get ready to make friends with a stranger, move in, and see what happens. Because this is the Spaceman Barry episode.
Flightless, flightless, flightless bird touchdown in America. I'm a flightless bird touchdown in America.
Do you have any nightmare roommate stories?
Yeah, I have a couple.
Doesn't surprise me somehow.
I moved out when I was 18 and moved into the city.
This is Chicago.
This is Chicago. My first apartment was above a Starbucks
Beautiful.
in Wicker Park.
Great location.
It was 3 dudes living in that apartment.
It's always the way, right?
Yeah. And one of our roommates got really, really drunk.
Mm-hmm.
They were both a little bit older than me. They were like mid-20s, I think. I knew them just through different bands. And he got really drunk, came home, got completely naked, and pissed on my other roommate while he was sleeping.
That's horrific.
He like went into the wrong room, completely naked, just started peeing on him.
So the other roommate woke up to being pissed on,
to being peed on, and was like, "What the fuck are you doing?" And he was like, "Oh, sorry." Then went to the corner of the room, finished, and went back to bed.
Oh.
And my room was across the hall, and I remember hearing him get a call. Like, so that the roommate that got peed on just got up and left.
Gone.
We didn't see him for like 2 weeks.
Yeah, I'm done here. I've been pissed on. I'm leaving.
I heard the next morning him on the phone with him, telling him that had happened, and he had no idea. Like,
no, just blackout,
totally
just gone,
blacked out. Yeah.
The blackout drunk, when people get the brain just disengages. It's got like the main motor functions going. You keep breathing. Don't fall into any water. And if you need to piss, your brain's gone. You just go. Awful.
Yeah, I mean, he thought he was going to the bathroom, probably.
Yeah, he thought he'd be in a little. Yeah, thought it was his friend was a toilet.
It was also that apartment was really weird. It was above an old Starbucks, but it used to be an old hospital.
Oh, that's
in Chicago.
Vibe. That's a vibe.
The rooms all had like doors that just went out into the hallway that were then sealed shut. The bedrooms were basically like sick rooms for this old hospital, and like,
oh, this is so bleak. I was excited about living above the Starbucks, but this is horrific. Yeah, and I imagine every bedroom probably felt like it could be a bathroom the way it was laid out.
Yeah,
generic.
Yeah. They were little hospital rooms.
I had a friend piss on me in a tent one time. I was camping.
On purpose?
No, blackout drunk. Same. Just like terrible brain. I mean, alcohol's horrific when it's drunk too much. It's awful what it does to people. But yeah, I remember waking up to my tent unzipping, and I was like, what are you doing in here? And no response. And then just like piss. Yeah, just awful. Yeah. It's a good advertisement for getting sober, pretty much, I think, when that happens.
I started locking my door after that night.
So I should say at the beginning of this episode, probably it's going to be divided into two parts. The first part is pretty safe to listen to. Second part, if you have kids in the car, probably wait till they're not in the car to finish it off, but we sort of ease into it. But yeah, I find stories about people living together and how things can go wrong really fascinating. Mm-hmm. I wrote another story on Webworm a while ago now about my friend, housemate, one night went across the road and killed the neighbor, and then came back to their house, shaved their beard, put all their clothes in the washing machine, set it going, and just returned to normal life living with my friend. And my friend, there were always like loud parties next door. There were always disturbances. The cops were there. So my friend wakes up, someone's been killed next door. This is crazy. Never suspected his housemate to have been the one. They spent the week, I think, playing Grand Theft Auto and watching Dexter, which blows my mind, while the police investigation was going on.
And how long did it take them to catch him?
I understand, about a week.
Only a week.
Only a week? Yeah, it was, but just the idea of a housemate doing that and then continuing to live with them. The stories, if you go to Webworm and just search for Gary, because the story is called Gary, that's the housemate. But yeah, I'm fascinated by these stories, and that's what today's episode is about. Another of those scenarios that starts well and goes pretty terribly.
Have you had a lot of roommates?
I have. I mean, classic situation. You move out of home. I moved to a new city. I was in some pretty rank flats. Mm-hmm. Do you have the word flat in America? Is that a thing? Yeah, flat. Rank flats. No nightmare stories. Probably the worst story, and it's more just an icky story. Again, it's always the case, is a guy live with a bunch of guys, just smelly. Kitchen always overcrowded. Your food marked in the fridge with your name. Yep. So feral and But the worst thing about that particular, my first flat ever, was that the internet modem and router was in one of the guys' rooms, and this guy, it was a rough room to go into to reset the router. It was a bad time in there. And so that was, I won't elaborate on that too much, but not fun.
Yeah, I had another roommate that he was so hairy that his hair was everywhere in the apartment.
He was molted as well. So hairy, and the hair was falling out.
It like fridge had hair all over it.
Oh, no, not.
And then like in the bathroom, hair was everywhere. When he would like groom himself.
Oh, he'd do
It just
a full body
all over the
shave.
sink. I don't know if it was a full body shave, but it was little hairs everywhere. And then he also, you met him actually.
I love this.
He had a thing with toilet paper too. He used so much toilet paper.
Oh, I have a friend that does this. He calls it nesting. It's just there's too much toilet paper. He puts it over the room so it's clean, so he doesn't like sitting on the toilet seat.
Yeah.
So he'll toilet paper that, and then he wipes to the point where, I mean, he needs a bidet. Like he wipes too much, and the toilet bowl just gets filled with paper. Yeah,
that's him. And to the point where like Natalie ended up moving in with me at that apartment, and we had to keep toilet paper like in the bedroom closet for us because it would just be gone. Of like, no one taught him how to wipe as a boy, and he used too much toilet paper. And the funny thing is, I'm still friends with him. And I went to his house and mentioned this to his now wife.
Oh, you just brought that up?
Yeah.
Well, she'd know. Had the behavior continued?
They had fought about that. And he claimed that it wasn't like a thing. And she's like, no.
It's been a thing. Yeah, there's no way this hasn't been a thing. It's not just me that has beef with this. So you could confirm that to her.
I could confirm it to her, and I think it helped her win the fight. So maybe things have been resolved a little bit, and he's gotten a little bit better with his toilet paper usage.
That's the thing. You move in with people, and I think you have about 3 months of everyone being their best selves, and everyone just presents the best version. And then after that 3 months, the realness comes out, and things start to grate, and it can get rough.
He was a good roommate otherwise, I will say. It was just the hair and the toilet paper.
Would he unclog the drains, or was that up to other roommates to do?
Well, it was just the two of us in this house. Yeah, I don't think there was much unclogging. I don't think he'd be the type that would just leave it if he clogged it.
Okay, that's good. Okay.
But I also don't think there was any maintenance going on.
All right, well, today's episode, things go a bit more off the rails, so let's get into this. But I would say there was a lot of feedback to the Creed episode. Yeah, there was a lot of feedback to that episode, a lot of thoughts and feelings and emotions, and we'll get to that. But yeah, this is the story of Spaceman Barry. I think I'm always attracted to stories about unconventional people living together. I guess this is partly because so many people, myself included, have these experiences of having to live with someone out of necessity, of having a roommate so you make the rent each week, or maybe having a boarder so you can keep up with mortgage payments. And because of this, we end up co-inhabiting these spaces with people who often start off as strangers before 3 things tend to happen. 1, we become really good friends with them. 2, we stay sort of strangely aloof the whole time and just put up with each other. Or 3, sometimes we don't get on and things go wrong. I think of the story I wrote for Webworm about Gary, my friend whose housemates strolled across the road one night and killed their neighbour. Gary's housemate killed the neighbour, then strolled back inside, shaved off his beard, put his clothes in the washing machine, and kept living with Gary for a few weeks. Gary none the wiser. Today I've got another story that I've come across about unconventional people coming together to live. It's really different to that Gary story. There's a death, but no murder. And it's more of a story of friendship, but an unconventional one. And I wanted to share it with you. Chapter 1. Noah. Noah is one of the most chilled out people I've ever met. He's also, in my opinion, very cool. Cool in an effortless kind of way. He's in his early 40s, with long flowing hair and a really big, long beard. In a former life, he was a pro snowboarder, but these days he does fancy technical things for a company that helps put on big shows. He showed me photos of his office one day, this giant warehouse where they play with giant LED screens and lighting equipment. As I said, he's cool. Noah didn't grow up in LA. He grew up in all sorts of places, which I'll let Noah tell you about later. But for the sake of where the story starts, Noah arrived in Los Angeles a few years before the pandemic hit, and found himself living in a block of apartments in Long Beach.
I moved here on a motorcycle. I didn't have a car at the time. And my friend was like, hey, my friend has a room. I was like, yeah, tell her I'll take it. If there's a kitchen and there's a bathroom and I have my own room, I don't care who it is. And if it's your friend, cool. So I moved in sight unseen upstairs.
The woman Noah moved in with, well, this ended up being almost immediately one of those bad housemate stories.
She was a highly problematic person. And turns out like she had her drug issues and was a stripper, and not that that matters how you get your money, but it was problematic to live with. Always going to court. What are you going to court for?
It was a stressful living situation for Noah, and so he found himself talking about it to the old man who lived in the apartment downstairs, Barry.
So Barry was 6'3" or 6'4". He was like a tall, lanky build, little traces of hair, a little bit, maybe around his ear, around the back, but very slight, very pale white, his bald head. He's just generic kind of white old man.
Tall, old white man. Yeah. Probably what I will look like, but slightly taller at that age.
Yeah. Always in khaki pants, and he would have his T-shirt like tucked into it.
The first thing that struck Noah about Barry, apart from his height, is how much he kept to himself. He was mostly just inside, only ever emerging to have a smoke.
He'd have a couple puffs of a cigarette, put it out, and he'd go back in. And he'd have like one cigarette would last him 3 days. And every time I went out, he'd be like, hey, how you doing? Good. How you? Just the old guy downstairs. This nice guy. And he would watch the neighborhood and watch what's going on and go back inside.
Barry was a bit like Noah, low-key, unassuming. And so these two men, they got on. The same could not be said for Noah and his roommate upstairs.
I come home from work, I'm like making dinner, and this girl I live with, she's like, hey, I'm going to be moving, so you got to figure out where you're going to go. And I was just like, well, no, just go on Craigslist and get a roommate like anybody does, and just get them in your room. I'm not going anywhere.
Noah gently made the suggestion he talk to their landlord so he could just take over the lease, but she hated this idea for some reason, kicking up a big fuss, demanding next month's rent before storming out.
I bring it up to Barry downstairs, and I'm like, hey man, like I feel weird because she's really aggro, but like I don't feel good about giving her money because if she's just moving out, I gotta pay a lot more money to find a place, and it's finding a place to live in LA is a full-time job. It's
horrific.
It's not easy. So Barry goes, you know what? I don't trust that girl as far as I could throw her. And I said, really? He goes, yep. And he put his cigarette out and put the butt in his pocket. He's like, I wouldn't give her a dime. This a couple days pass, and Barry catches me on the front porch when I'm coming back from work. And he's like, hey, I was thinking, you're looking for a place to live, right? I was like, yeah, do you know anybody? He's like, well, if you can use it. He's like, I've got a completely empty room directly under your room. It was like both upstairs and downstairs apartments were completely the same layout. He's like, I have the same room under your room in the back. It's totally empty. There's nothing in there, and if you don't mind like staying with an old guy, you're welcome to just move down here and just have that back room. I was like, you got to be kidding me. You're not serious. He's like, no. He's like, I don't care. He's like, actually, I could use like a younger dude, to around. Like, you could probably help me with some stuff. I was like, dude, I'll help you with anything. I was like, you're dead serious. He's like, you're cool. We've never had a thing. You've always been nice. He's like, if you don't like it and it doesn't work out, you can leave.
And so Noah, well, he moved. He says it was the quickest move he's ever done.
I went upstairs. She wasn't there. 20 minutes. I moved all my stuff downstairs into the room. It was totally clean. And I'm like, this is cool. He's like, fine by me. I was like, all right. So I go upstairs and I'm sweeping and I'm mopping my room that I just moved out. And she comes home. And she's like, where's all your stuff? It's like, well, you told me I had to figure out a living situation, so I moved. See you later. And she was screaming her head off, and I left, and I just went downstairs and in the house. And she came flying outside to look where I went and just yell at me down the street, and I was already home. I was already in the house, so she didn't know where I went.
And just like that, Noah was living with Barry, a man in his 30s living with a guy rapidly approaching 80.
He loved watching Rachel Maddow. That was the last thing every night. Rachel would end her show, and she'd be like, good night. And he'd be like, good night, Rachel. And he'd turn off the TV, and he'd be like, well, I'm about to go to bed. And he'd get up, and he'd say good night, and he'd just shuffle his feet to his bed.
Chapter 2. Living with an old dude.
So fast forward, I'm living with this old dude, and I help him like change lights and do the dishes, and like it was just sweep and mop, just regular household stuff. And like,
Just stop for a second. What's it like living with someone who's, how old was he? About 80?
he was 79 at the time.
Okay, what was it like? Because most people, their roommates are of a sort of similar age. What's it like living with someone who's like double?
Yeah, I thought it would be. I thought it was going to be super weird, and like I wouldn't have any. Like it would be like living with an old, like having to like wipe their butt or something, or like always having to listen to the boring, droning conversations of like an elderly person. But he was whip smart, super street smart. He knew everything that was going on. He knew all current lingo and slang. It was like talking to like a 35-year-old dude. Any topic, anything. He was incredibly smart, incredibly well-spoken, great vocabulary, and like honestly, a really good sense of humor. He was funny, and he got jokes. So it really was like hanging with my bud, just duding out.
It kind of takes a stereotype out of what old people are about, right? That's kind of nice.
Yeah, 100%. It totally was. It was much different than what I thought it was going to be.
They fell into a rhythm, using the small amount of space they had to coexist in what was mostly bliss. Barry had a couple of cats who'd mostly sleep on the fold-out table the old man used for his computer and printer. Noah was a cat guy, so he put up with the fur and meowing. And Noah says Barry would always have a fresh pot of coffee on the stove. I don't know about you, but a memory I have of having housemates was getting in each other's way in the kitchen. Someone was always in there when you needed it. Not with Barry.
I would always ask, like, hey, you want me to, like, I love to cook. I'm always cooking at breakfast or dinner. Like, I would always cook a big dinner for myself and get up early, make breakfast. And a couple times he'd be like, yeah, I'll have, whatever. But all he ate, Hungry Man, like the frozen dinners, nonstop. I was like, dude, I have fresh food. Like, I'll cook you up some broccoli and like beans and rice and like, we'll do pasta. And he was like, no, I'm fine. He was always just like, I'm fine. I got it. And like self-sufficient.
Whenever Noah needed to use the kitchen, Barry would magically make sure he was out of the way. This might seem like a small thing, but I think it's small things like this that really help them get on with each other. Also, Noah says Barry was just really interesting. He was interesting because he was interested in the world around him. He was always learning, and Barry was always keen to pass that knowledge on.
Like I learned things from him. I learned a lot, and he was an electrical engineer. He wrote books. I was just like, he didn't write books, and he'd show me like he had these books of like you flip through. They're like electrical diagrams and really impressive stuff. And he was a ham radio operator, W6RBC, I think was his call number. His whole bedroom was 1960s ham radio stuff. And, over the years, I could tell the ham radio stuff was really dropping off. He'd be like, oh, the radio band's dead. I can't get anybody. And in my head, I'm like, everyone's online. No one... no one's really on the ham radio, but things would break. He would be in there like fiddling with stuff. Seeing him fix like a capacitor on some old ham radio equipment was really impressive. I didn't think that he could see good enough to do that for one, or have like the dexterity to really take care of it, but he did.
At this point, Noah's girlfriend Jess chips in. She's been sitting here the whole time, and like me, she's been listening intently. But sometimes, also like me, she'll chip in.
I would be there and you two would just be like simple, kind of sweet, but like bickering.
It was like half like ragging it. Like we would rib each other for sure. That was another thing. We would be arguing about something. He'd be like, this is this. And I'd be like, no, it's like that and whatever. And I'd be like, dude, we got the internet. Just Google it. It's, you know, it's not 1940 anymore. You can just, you think it's that. I think it's this. Let's find out. And it was like, if he was wrong, he's like, oh, I guess I was wrong. He's like, wow, you were right. That's cool. I learned something.
If only we could all communicate more like that, right?
Yeah. It'd make the world a little more easygoing.
And that links to another thing Noah came to love about Barry, how helpful he was.
He like supported me. I was getting into flight school and I was like, I don't know, I'm thinking about it. And he's like, you're smart. I think you should do it. His dad had an airplane back in the day, so he had all this knowledge. Like, he's so smart on so many different things. So we could talk airplanes. He had all this knowledge about airplanes and like helped me study. And I actually got into flight school.
Noah says without Barry, he wouldn't have had the confidence to follow through. And I guess Barry had plenty of time on his hands, retired, at home all day. As Noah's work life started to get busier, Barry was always there to help Noah as he settled into his new life in LA.
He had helped me even get like my first credit card. I never had a credit card before. He helped me get a credit card. I was so scared to ever do it. And I built my credit up over 700 and like, I was proud of myself. Like, he's like, you're a smart dude. You're not going to mess it up. You can do it. He walked me through the whole thing.
You know how I said earlier about Noah living all over the place before he got to Los Angeles? Well, he soon discovered it was the same with Barry, but in a really uncanny way. Because Noah discovered that for most of their lives, he and Barry had lived in most of the same places, just separated by time. Sometimes years, sometimes decades.
Barry and I lived in the same towns from the East Coast, from Greenpoint in Brooklyn. We lived in around Albany, New York, Saratoga, Lake George, New York. Very specific, like little nooks and crannies of upstate New York. Both lived in Lake Tahoe, a little offset from each other, and then both ended up in Long Beach in the same house. So we had a lot to talk about all these little specific little towns and all the streets, the parks, hey, is this still there? You know,
You kind of did have a lot in common in a weird way, like more than you, the typical person.
Yeah, we had tons to talk about, like life experiences that were in the same places, years apart.
In their current lives that had now intersected, a year went by, then two. Sometimes, like Jess said, they'd bicker, but in the same way that friends do. Because Noah and Barry, they were friends. And the way Noah saw it, Barry needed a friend. And without really noticing, Noah realized he'd become Barry's best friend.
There was a couple friends I saw over the years that would stop by and check up on him, but no family was stopping by, no, you know, other than like the friends that live, like the neighbors, they'd be like, hey, Barry, how you doing? You know, they'd say hi.
Did he ever talk about family or anything like that?
He didn't talk much about family stuff. I know he had an ex-wife who he hated. His whole goal, he was like, my whole goal is to outlive that bitch. I'm going to outlive her. You know, they would say that usually around his birthday. He's like, yeah, another year down. It's like, that was his whole goal, was to outlive her. I don't think he did. We didn't talk enough about it, but I know he married his wife. They had kids, but I think she had a daughter from a previous marriage or something. I don't totally know that family dynamic. I know that went south. It wasn't good. Somehow he ended up marrying the stepdaughter and having kids with the stepdaughter. What do you call that? It's like you were married, it was your stepdaughter, and then you're divorced. Is it your stepdaughter?
Is it still your stepdaughter? Yeah.
It's not? Or it is?
I don't know.
I don't know how it works. So it's like, hey, we're not related anymore. You want to get married? I don't know. But yeah, I guess he had a son. I never met him. And he had I think 2 daughters, and one is handicapped. That I wouldn't have been able to meet her.
Noah pulls out his phone and starts scrolling through as he talks to me. He's going through a 6-year text thread that represents his and Barry's friendship. He holds up his phone, and there's a photo of Barry blowing out a candle on his birthday cake. The number on the cake reads 78.
Yeah, his birthday would come around, and I'd make him a cake, light the candles, and like it would just be, I would sing him happy birthday, just me and him in the living room. You know, I would sing him happy birthday, he'd blow out the candles, and that he like got a specific cake tray, like that cake would last him a couple weeks, and he would he'd chip away at it. It was awesome.
Noah pulls up some more photos. The cake is always similar, chocolate, but the numbers change, 78, 79, 80. As Barry gets older, their friendship gets closer. Chapter 2.5. Barry solves a mystery. This is a short chapter, so I've just called it 2.5.
One day he calls me at work. He's like, "Hey, come straight home when you get off work. I got something I need to show you." I'm like, "What?" And he's like, "No, you won't believe it." I'm like, "All right, cool, you know." So I ride my motorcycle home. They come in. I'm like, "Dude, what's up?" He's like, "Look on the table. Look at that." And I look on the table, and it's mail from my roommate from upstairs. He's like, "That was taped to the door, so I took it." I'm like, "You can't take people's mail." He's like, she doesn't live here. She changed her number. I can't get a hold of her. She's not coming back." He's like, "Open it up." I'm like, "Barry, I'm not opening it." He's like, "I already did," you know.
Casual mail fraud.
Oh, yeah. So I open it up, and it's an eviction notice. And all these things I was like, bam, bam, all this. I was like, oh. She owed the landlord like $6,000, and she was just pocketing my rent money and not paying the landlord. And that's why she constantly was going to court, getting eviction extensions.
Yeah, he solved this mystery in a slightly illegal way, but he solved that mystery.
Yeah, I was just like, what is going on? So he was kind of like that, though. He would like get to the bottom of something or like whatever. He wanted to like learn about things all the time. Or just
He was like, "Get home quick."
Yeah, get home. He goes, "Don't go anywhere. Come directly home as soon as you're off. I got something I need to show you." And it was that he opened someone else's eviction notice.
So yeah, Barry solved the mystery of why Noah's former housemate from upstairs, the stripper, was always a bit grumpy and didn't want Noah talking to their landlord. But even with all this in mind, Noah was kind of grateful that she had existed, because without her, he wouldn't have met Barry. Chapter 3. Complications.
Living with him made me realize that I'm going to be old someday. Like he was on an alien planet. All the actors he saw on TV dead. All the musicians he listened to as a kid, all that never played anymore. You just all the things that like you grow up with, the cars, the social thing, everything is just like, he's 80 now. He's on an alien planet.
Any downsides to living with someone sort of approaching 80?
I mean, being like a single dude and I was dating, I could not bring anybody there. that was like, oh yeah, hey, yeah, come back to my place. Oh, what's that in the living room? Like, oh, that's just Barry. He stays there. Like he's always in the living room. He's not going anywhere.
I've been dating for like 4 or 5 months, and I was like, he always comes to my place, and I was like, does he have like a secret like life? Does he have a wife? Like, what is happening? But I was also like, I'm cool, I'm chill, like whatever. And then we went to the beach one night, and then he needed to stop at his place. And he's like, do you want to go inside, use the bathroom? And I was like, sure. And he's like, I have a roommate. He's pretty old. And I was like, okay. And he was like, no, like he's really old. Like that was that's how he brought me in the first time. And I met Barry. He was super sweet and polite. And within that first meeting, he was watching some like ancient alien show. You know, usually people are like, haha. And he's like, you know, aliens are real. And I was like, okay. But like, you know, but also I was like, yeah, old guy, enjoy.
I should note here, because Noah mentions it a few times as we talk, Barry really, really loved Ancient Aliens. He loved Ancient Aliens because he loved aliens. The engineer, the guy who loves sending out communications into the ether via his ham radio set, he loved the idea of alien life. It's one of the things he and Noah would bicker about.
But I imagine there's an issue that's going to happen where your roommate is aging. You know, he is getting older. Did that cause any sort of issues?
He got bladder cancer. He had 7 surgeries, I think, in the time I lived there. His balance was getting really bad. That's
Barry.
He would be walking and he'd take a couple side steps and be like, whoa, almost lost it. So one day I'm like, this is getting out of hand. You know, seeing him like a drunk dude, but he's not. And he's just like, I don't know what's going on. I'm like, you gotta get your inner ears checked, dude. You got an inner ear issue going on. And he's like, no, it's not that. I'm like, that's the only place your balance is. So I got him a cane. I came in, I was like, yo, here's a cane. He's like, I don't need that. I was like, you do. He's like, nah. He's like, I can get up fine. Watch. And he's like showing me how he can stand up. I'm like, yeah, but you're 79, 80, 81. I don't know how old he was. I was like, dude, it's time for a cane. You got to swallow your pride. Like, you're an old guy. A cane looks good on you. You can do it. It's all good. And so he started using the cane, and then he was like, you know, singing praises up and down. Thank you so much. It's made everything so easy. I feel like I have another leg that I can like lean on. This is great. He's like, I was too stubborn. Thank you so much.
The cane helped, but it wasn't a solution. Barry tumbled over less, but he still tumbled.
So work starts getting crazy for me, and you know, I always like to help him out and be there and whatever. So I'd come home sometimes and he would like, his balance had been like getting progressively worse and worse. And I would come home and like, he would be on the floor and I'd be like, dude, what, come on, why didn't you call me? He's like, I wasn't near my phone. Like, how long you been on the ground? He's like, I just fell. Just help me up. So I'd help him up. And I was like, you know, multiple times it would be like, where's your cane? I was just going from the living room to the kitchen and getting a drink. I just didn't, you know.
So this is the idea he could have been lying there for a couple of hours and just waiting for you.
Yeah. So that became more and more. I would come in and he'd be on the floor and be like, oh. I started worrying and I started like feeling like if I wasn't staying there, if I stayed at my chick's house, I was thinking, oh, I hope he's okay.
Yeah, and there would be times that Noah would get a call at like 2 a.m. that like Barry had fallen and he'd have to like go down and like help him up. It was stressful. He cared about him, and it was like just an ever-present, like if you hadn't heard from Barry in a couple of days, was that because he was okay or because he couldn't get to his phone? So yeah, it's hard.
It was getting to be a bummer that, you know, no one to help. And then I'm like, oh, am I like the caretaker? If like what do I, my work's too crazy to be here all the time. And
I feel like it was mostly that, like that just started being more and more often.
Yeah, I felt the need to like take care of him, do stuff. He helped me a lot. And it was like I had to like be there. So
Chapter 4. The Table. I haven't talked about this because weirdly it didn't really come up as I talked to Noah, but I think it's worth noting that he and Barry went through the pandemic together. They'd lived together for about 5 years, but increasingly, especially as the COVID restrictions lifted in LA, Noah was spending more time in East LA with his girlfriend Jess. He couldn't keep eyes on Barry as much as he used to because he was spending less and less time at his place in Long Beach. So he and Barry would keep in touch via text. Each day, Noah would check in, and Barry would reply. But one day, the text stopped coming. As the day wore on, Noah worried more and more. That night, as he and Jess were out showing some out-of-town friends around, Earl and Christina, The whole time, Noah just kept thinking, something's wrong with Barry.
And we were driving back up to LA, and I was like, I hadn't heard from Barry today. We kind of had to go past Long Beach. I was like, you guys mind if we like sneak off the exit? I just want to like stop in and just say, hi, hey, you doing all right? You need anything? And so we pull up, and I was like, all right, I'll be right back. Just, whatever. So when I opened the door, you peer down a dark hallway to the light of the living room. And at the edge of the hallway and where the living room opens out, I see both of his feet, like he's laying on his back, and his feet are protruding like into the hallway, into my line of sight. And so I got this like cold chill, kind of like, oh man, dude, don't be dead. No. And so I'm like, hey, Barry, you all good? And doesn't say anything. And so as I walk up to him, he had his a computer desk, but it was just like a catering fold-out table. So the legs on the end it's kind of like a hoop, like a arched leg, so it can fold in. So he was underneath the table with his legs under the one side, and the other legs were like over his chest, neck, chin area. And it was like as if someone had pinned him down with the table.
Oh, so he was just lying trapped under the table.
He was trapped under the table. Like he couldn't have got his head couldn't fit. It looked like someone pinned him down. And the other weird thing is that the frame of my door was all broken and wood chips everywhere. So I'm like, what the hell? So I'm like looking around, like, did somebody break in here and like pin him down? I'm like, dude, are you okay? What's going on? And his dentures are falling out, and like he had pissed himself, and like he can't talk. It's like he had been there a long time. Like it had to have been, I would say, at least a day and a half. He had been on the floor there.
It's a really scary thing to walk in on.
Yeah, I was just like bewildered of like, what am I looking at? How did you get there? The door frame's broke. What that? So I was like, Bear, stay right here. I'll be right back. I ran outside to these guys.
And then he came out, and it looked like he had seen a ghost. He had like kind of gone like sheet white. Yeah, it was the first time I had seen him look like, oh, something has happened. Something not good has happened. And I think it was also the first time I've ever heard Noah ask for help.
They come in, and we're all just like, what the hell? So we get him some water. Me and my friend's husband, Earl, we lifted the table up, and we move it out of the way. And this table's covered with old magazines and a printer and a computer and just 8 pounds of cat hair because the cats just like lived on the printer. We sit him up. I get him some denture glue. We get some water.
This night became this like 4-person operation where like you and Earl were like lifting the table. Christina like went over and like held Barry so that if anything fell, it would hit her instead of him. And then I was on the trying to catch anything in case it fell.
Anyways, we get some sugar in him. He eats the cereal. He's starting to like talk normal again and just like coming back to it, and still not good.
You got his teeth in?
Yeah, he got his teeth glued back in.
He just looked so fragile. It was scary. Like it felt really something bad has happened, and it does, like the puzzle pieces don't make sense.
The fuck had happened?
Stay tuned for more Flightless Bird. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors. Flightless Bird is brought to you by Helix Sleep. Now, sleeping is one of my favorite things in the world. It's probably one of your favorite things as well. I've never met someone that doesn't like sleeping. Maybe a newborn baby, that's about it. Now, I'm not sure if you follow the baby pygmy hippo on social media, Moodang. I think I'm saying that name right. The name translates to bouncy pork, which I find very funny. Anyway, he's this incredibly greasy, incredibly cute hippo, and there's a lot of video of him on the internet of him sleeping, which almost makes me want to cry because it's so cute. My point is, I like sleeping. I like watching Moodang sleep almost as much as I like sleeping myself. And I think the only way my sleep could be improved anymore is if Moodang was in the bed with me, which sounds weird now I say it. Anyway, this is an ad about beds. And I love sleep, and I love my Helix mattress, which I sleep on. I found out about this mattress brand via this podcast. I went online and I ordered it and I tried it, and yeah, I love it. I've had a lifetime of shitty mattresses. You might be in that situation too. And getting a Helix mattress has just shown me even more how bad those mattresses were. Good God. I love my Helix sleep mattress, and I'm really glad I heard about it, and I'm really glad I ordered it. And yeah, for someone that has a slightly dicey back, having a supportive mattress for me has really saved my life. I took a quiz, it got sent to my door. It's the right kind of mattress for the way I sleep. And probably the only way my sleep could be improved now is if I had Muding in the bed with me, although he's a very loud snorer, so probably not. Anyway, if you want a good mattress, a great mattress in fact, then Flightless Bird listeners receive 20% off all mattress orders. You just go to helixsleep.com/bird. That's helixsleep.com/bird. There's no Muding thrown in, but you do get a really good mattress. Support for Flightless Bird comes from Quince. Now, I love shopping for clothes from Quince because I can always find stuff that I like, and a really wide variety of stuff that gets shipped direct to my door. It's been a busy season of events and travel, and a lot of my clothing has taken a beating or just been left behind in New Zealand. A total overhaul isn't in my budget, but I'm replacing some worn-out stuff with affordable, high-quality essentials from Quince. Quince has all the seasonal must-haves like cashmere sweaters from $50, 100% European linen shirts, and, for me, versatile activewear. The best part? All Quince items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands. And by partnering directly with top factories, Quince cuts out the cost of the middleman and passes the savings on to us. And it only works with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices along with premium fabrics and finishes. I love that. By the way, right now, as I'm talking to you, I'm wearing some flow knit performance shorts because I'm about to go up a hill and they're really comfortable. Upgrade your wardrobe with pieces made to last with Quince. Go to quince.com/bird for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/bird to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/bird.
So I never really understood how he got under there, but he was telling me, he's like, yeah, someone broke in, they took everything, they took your surfboards, they went in my room, they stole all my ham radio equipment, and they took my gun. You know, he had like an airsoft gun he kept in his drawer that looked like a real handgun, but it wasn't. He's like, go look. And I look in his room, all the ham radio equipment's there. I'm like, everything's here. I'm like, who was that? Who came? Like, somebody definitely came in because the door frame was broken. There's wood chips everywhere. He's like, look in my drawer. They took my gun. I was like, your gun's there. He's like, go in your room. I was like, all my stuff's exactly where I left it. Like, what happened here, dude? Who came in here? Fast forward, I found out this is like probably a week later. I found out what actually had happened because I was like, something definitely happened. Nothing's missing. He had fallen and he didn't have his phone, but I guess he had a pen cap or something, and he was tapping on the ground nonstop. And the lady upstairs heard this like knocking. She came to the door and was like, hey, are you all right? And he said like he couldn't get up, but the door was locked and we didn't have any hidden keys, so she couldn't get in to get to him. And so she had called for help, and the fire department came and broke the door open. And they got him up, put him in his bed, and they're like, okay, well, see you later. And never came back to check. He probably got up to go pee. He fell again because his balance was horrible. And he was stuck there.
Fuck, so he'd been rescued once by the fire department and then just got into trouble pretty quickly after that again.
Yeah, that must have been what happened.
My friend Christina and Noah are now like forever bonded because they had to they took him into the bathroom. They changed him.
Throughout what was a pretty horrible, distressing scene, there was the occasional bit of humor, because this was Barry, and Barry could be funny.
Oh, no. He asked for new underwear. And so she told her where the drawer was. He's like, all right, so he brought him a change of pants and new underwear. So he's like, get the one that's got the pouch in it. Make sure you get the one with the pouch. And she's like, all right, so you got it. And he's like, all right, you got the right one. So I'm stabilizing him. She's pulling his underwear up. And he's like, now hold on, wait, hold on. make sure you get Mr. Big in the pouch. So they were like, okay. So he's out back in the living room, put him back in his chair.
And finally, with Mr. Big back in the pouch, the paramedics arrived.
So we carried him out and put him in the car.
Noah describes finally getting his stubborn friend to the hospital as just this massive relief. Not only had this been a really long night, but the last few years as Barry's health declined had been hard too. From what Noah could tell, he was Barry's only lifeline. So while these circumstances weren't great, to finally have Barry surrounded by care, well, that felt really good.
I see him all hooked up to the IV. I see like there was this like sense of like this weight was lifted off my shoulder, and this like blanket of relief came over me, where like I was looking at him laying in a hospital bed with 4 nurses around him with the machines, and I was just like, oh my God, like he's where he needs to be. He's like, if anything happens, he's safe.
Did you see him again after that time? What happened to him post-hospital admission?
This is where the story got difficult, kind of went sideways, and I had to like kind of make a new room in my brain for the whole thing.
Chapter 5. Things go sideways. The days after finding Barry trapped under that table were spent navigating what to do with Barry. Remember, up until this time, Noah was essentially Barry's unofficial in-house help.
So talking to the social workers there, they're like, she's like, this is where it's hard because you have to kind of step back and let the social workers, they're asking me, do his kids come by? Does he have any? I'm like, there's nobody. Like, it's me and him. And I never really asked about the family dynamic because it's not my business. They're like, well, this is where you kind of have to step back, because if you keep coming to the hospital every day and being like, hey, how you doing, showing up, then you are the caretaker. And, you're just going to get looped into this thing where you aren't going to have the time. Like, you work so much, you're not able to be a caretaker. And the state has programs to, like, make sure he's taken care of and he'll get the care he needs.
You just had to sort of make a decision to take a different path and just leave Barry in a way.
Yeah, exactly. But also knowing he's where he needs to be, that made it actually very easy, because I was happy he had the people around him.
Noah kept in touch with the social worker, and he heard Barry was getting a little better. They were going to transfer him into a rehab center. Then things went sort of quiet. Days went by, then weeks. Noah was busy with work, and life just did what life does and moved on. But at some point, Noah eventually called that rehab center that Barry was apparently moved to, but by then, there was no Barry checked in.
They're like, yeah, there's no one here by that name. I'm like, well, where did he go? You guys didn't send him home, and they didn't know who I was, and I'm not family. So because of the HIPAA laws and all that, like, they couldn't give me any info. So I hang out from them like, man, like, they transferred him. Why wouldn't they tell me, like, the info or where he went?
For Noah, this all seemed like a weird mystery. Like, where had Barry gone? But for Jess, the answer to Barry's whereabouts seemed much more obvious. Barry hadn't vanished into thin air. He was in his 80s. He was frail. He smoked a lot. Barry must have been dead.
We were sitting on the bed. You went to the bathroom. We hadn't said anything out loud yet, but inside I was like, obviously this person, I think, has died. Like, if you're calling the place. And so I was like, I'm going to Google him and just see if there's an obituary. And you came out of the bathroom like you had, like, I think you had called someone from in there. And I was like sitting, I had found an article. And I was waiting for you to finish up on the call, and you hang up, and I look at you, and I was like, Barry has a nickname. And you're like, oh, yeah? And I go, it's the Spaceman Molester. And you say, well, that's not good.
Okay, so just to clear something up, Barry had died. His obituary was there online. But something else had topped the Google results. It was the number one Google result.
So I'm like, what do you mean? What, the spaceman molester? I'm like, what the hell? So she's like, shows me the phone, and there it is. Like, if you type in his name, the first thing that pops up is a LA Times article from 1995, 30 years ago, pops up. And all this is like, Spaceman Molester gets 20 years. I'm like, what? And it's his name. And I'm like, come on. And I scroll down and it's his face. And I'm like, reading this article and flashing in my head all this time I spent in this dude's house. Gave me a place to stay. Was super kind to me, super nice. Not one weird thing ever. And like, you're a pro. You are a pro. Completely got me. There's like absolutely no... I'm like bewildered still talking about this.
Can you Google the article now and see if it's still coming up? What does that headline say?
So this is September 16th, 1995. Spaceman molester gets 20 years. Crime. Barry Briskman, posing as an alien, told young teenage girls he was recruiting Earthlings for a utopia in another galaxy.
It seems made up. And it's a LA Times. It's completely real.
And that LA Times article, it's a lot to take in.
That was written in 1995, and I think to this day, it's probably one of the craziest things that's ever been written.
I'll read a bit of it. If you want to read the whole thing yourself, just Google Barry Briskman or Spaceman Molester. The piece is written by Anna Neal, published September 16th, 1995. Part of what makes the article sort of amazing is that it includes all of Barry's master plan, which is, to say the least, a lot. I'll read some of it. A North Hollywood man who convinced his young victims he was a space alien recruiting them for a utopian society in a faraway galaxy was sentenced to 20 years in state prison Friday for molesting two 13-year-old girls. Barry A. Briskman, 59, already is serving a 10-year sentence in Nevada for using the same elaborate ruse to seduce a 12-year-old runaway, prosecutor Stephen J. Ibsen said. According to court records, from mid-1990 through to early 1991, Briskman claimed to be an alien from the planet Klablel, recruiting a team of girls with superior beauty and intelligence for a female-dominated utopian society led by a Queen Heternia, who was based atop the Tropicana Hotel in Las Vegas. But first, he told his victims they had to double their IQs and break down their subcons, or subconscious intelligence barriers. It began with strip poker to break down our subcons, one victim recalled. Later, she said, they had intercourse so he could inject the girls with IRFs, immunities to ward off space diseases during their travels in his spaceship, parked at Lake Tahoe. After each encounter, Briskman convincingly dialed Andy, the Kablelian computer, model Andrak 4000. The computer gave readouts of the girls' subcon and IRF levels. Once they acquired 100 IRFs, they were ready for space travel. Balding, gangly and pale, with a fringe of white hair and thick glasses, Briskman sat with his back toward the victims, while both gave heart-wrenching statements. Briskman agreed to plead to 14 counts of sexually molesting minors.
Now I'm like really struggling with this. Like, I just lost like the guy I lived with. Like, I lost my roommate. Like, I lost the person I had a conversation with all the time and like helped me out a lot. Then I got like the angel on one shoulder and the demon on the other, because like, and I'm like crying, and I'm like, dude, he just died in a room in a rehab facility with like nobody around him, not his cats, no friends, nobody came to visit him. And I'm like crying, and then the demon pops up on the other shoulder, and he's like, well, that's kind of how that story ends. So I'm like, I feel horrible, and then it's just like, Reading this story, it gets more and more and more bizarre. If you Google his name, and I was just like, I lived with the monster.
Chapter 6: Loose Ends. Noah had lived with Barry for about 6 years. He'd only found out about Barry's other life shortly after he had died. That article in the LA Times was written in 1995, and as it stated, Barry went away for about 20 years for tricking minors into having sex with him. Doing the maths, the article was written in 95, he went away for 2 decades.
I think he got out 2014 or 2015.
And he was released just months before Noah met him.
That made the apartment make sense, and like his computer desk, that was just like a folding table. That was like, oh, this will work. I'm not in jail anymore. And so it just kind of stayed like that. And so I was just, dude, get a desk. He's like, this is fine. I was like, all right, whatever. He likes it.
But that's the thing, right? You move in with people and you take them at face value. Noah was in a bind. Barry offered him a place to stay. Years and years of friendship followed.
And when we were packing up your room that night, like we opened up the hall closet and just checking if there's any Noah stuff. And there were like stacks of binders of like court cases. Like he kept all the files, and we just left it. Yeah. Because at that point we knew, and it was like, but it's wild. Like it was right there. It was next to your bedroom. Like just court cases, files and files.
There were other reminders about the whole thing that crept up in the years after Barry had died, some of them not entirely great. Like you might remember early on how Barry helped Noah apply for his first credit card. Well, that act of kindness came with some unusual strings attached, which is maybe what you'd expect from someone called the Spaceman Molester.
Fast forward a couple months, and like my credit is just tanking. Like horrible, like dropped like 30 points, and like I paid everything on time. And then part of me, I was just like, you know what, that's why I never had a credit card, because like the house always wins. I did everything right and my score is plummeting. Like, what is going on?
So Noah called his bank.
I'm like, this makes no sense. Like, yeah, this is really weird. And then he's like, I'm sorry. I'm like, what? It's like, well, the primary on your account had passed away. I'm like, what are you talking? I was like, I'm the primary. It's my account. It's like my name's on the card. What do you mean the primary died?
At this point on the phone, Noah assumed that for this whole time he had been the secondary on the account, because Barry had put himself as the primary card holder.
Like, I'm really sorry to hear that, but if you just give me the name of the primary on your account, like we can get it all squared away and like get it. I was like, oh, okay, yeah. I was like, no problem. His name is Barry Briskman. And they're like, no. Like, what do you mean no? It couldn't be anybody else. And they're like, you said Barry? Like, I'm like, yeah, Barry Briskman. They're like, no, that's not it.
After a lot of talk and prodding with the bank, Noah found out that the primary name on the credit card account was Denny Briskman.
So Denny is his handicapped daughter, Denise. He used her information and opened a fraudulent credit card line with his handicapped daughter, who's schizophrenic, who was never going to know he ever did this because his credit was garbage. So he opened the line under hers and kind of built it up.
The trouble was, that credit started going to shit when Barry called the bank and told them his daughter Denise had died. Denise hadn't died, but he'd done this so he could avoid paying a credit card bill.
So I'm on the phone with the credit card company. Like, I look like the biggest con man on earth. Yeah. Like, no, this guy set me up with the credit card. No, he put it was his daughter. Oh, no, but he said she died. No, she's still alive. Oh, we'll get him on the phone. Like, no, he died in February. Like, I was like, I can't win this. I don't expect you to believe me. But this is the story.
It's strange thinking about Noah on the phone, trying to explain this whole crazy thing to his bank. He had a story that was true, but it seemed utterly unbelievable. It was a convoluted, unbelievable story that existed because of Barry Briskman, a man who spent a great deal of his life fabricating stories so he could selfishly and callously get what he wanted. One of his victims, a child actor, bravely spoke in the LA Times interview from '95. "It's mental rape," she said. "He manipulated us. He brainwashed us. He started out gradually and it just kept going and going. It was the Energizer Bunny. I didn't know I was going to have sex with him when I started. It was a team and we were going to be best friends."
You know, in the article, it talks about, what does it say? They had intercourse so he could inject the Earth girls with IRFs, immunities to ward off space diseases, during their travels to his spaceship parked at Lake Tahoe. And it's like, oh, all those times he would like talk to Noah about living in Lake Tahoe. Like that was part of his like...
It was part of Barry's story.
I'll never forget this. And once all this came, I was like, oh. So I'm studying. I'm deep in the books. I'm studying flight school stuff. He's watching his news, and he spins like Dr. Katz or like Inspector Gadget or Dr. Evil, whatever, spins in the chair, you know, right at me. Just line of sight straight to me on the couch. I've never seen him do this. So it's like, whoa, dude. He's like, hey, I need you to promise me something. I was like, yeah, dude, whatever you want. We're buds. What do you got? He's like, if anything's to happen to me, say if I just like drop dead one day right here, he's like, you need to promise me that I want to be cremated and I want you to bring my ashes up to Lake Tahoe and let me go up in Lake Tahoe. I'm like, yeah, dude, you got it. No big deal. And he's like, and also, I want you to take this computer out back and I want you to smash it to smithereens. I was like, all right, let me get this. I was like, so you want me to get you cremated, dump your ashes up in Lake Tahoe, and you want me to bring your computer, like of all the things, you want me to bring your computer out back and office space it? And he goes, that's right. I was like, okay, dude, you got it. That's pretty simple last wishes.
And then in context, you go, yeah, what was on those hard drives? And was Lake Tahoe because that's where the spaceship was going to land?
That's where the spaceship was. I don't know what happened when you know, it was 2 weeks. He had been dead before I even found out, so I don't know what happened to him. He just kind of disappeared. Maybe the spaceship came and he's just not on the Earth anymore. And I didn't bring his ashes to Lake Tahoe, but I do have his cat who got cremated that he loved. And the cat, I think, is kind of a pure, like, if I'm going to dump any ashes, I still have the cat's ashes. I might bring the cat's ashes up to Lake Tahoe and dump them. But that computer stayed on the desk when I left. I did not bring the computer out back.
Noah still has the ashes as I record this. He has no idea what happened to the computer. What he's left with, besides the remains of Barry's cat, are memories he has to come to terms with. Not for anything he did wrong, rather the opposite, what he did right. Because till the very end, he was a good roommate and a good friend to an old man who had no friends. That's what he's still battling with.
I have no bad interaction with this person. All he did was try to help me, and he did, and he was kind, and he was like a total sweetie pie to me, just sweet old dude who was like my bud. And I'm having like a really hard time with like, how could I have done that? I was this old guy's only friend for the remainder of his life after this. Like, you can't make friends after that. You can't get a job. You can't, like, you hide in your house. You maybe go on the porch and have a couple puffs of a cigarette and make it last a couple days. That's like, you probably don't hang out on your porch having an entire cigarette. You probably minimize your outside time and hide in your house.
Has it changed your perspective on people?
It has a bit. So this is like, kind of, I'm a little ashamed of being like, yeah, I lived in a registered sex offender's house. Is like, so when I tell the people the story, they're like, why didn't you Google him? And it's like, dude, like, have you ever Googled your grandparents? No.
I haven't Googled you.
You know, exactly. Google everybody. Google everybody, dude. I don't care who it is. I don't know. Like if I had Googled him beforehand, and I would just have this like, I'm in this house with this absolute monster, and I was like, I'm really like I was this monster's friend.
That's the story of Noah and Spaceman Barry.
Oof.
I think oof is the correct term. Yeah, he lived with him for, I think, between 5 and 6 years. The photos of Barry with the birthday cake that he made for him every year are very surreal to look at. And out of context, you just see this sort of old man who looks like any generic old man blowing out the candles. But in the context of the story, they're the creepiest photos I've ever seen.
I bet.
But yeah, Noah's left in this position now of just, because he did form a friendship with this guy and he was his carer. So, he'd help this guy into bed. He had no other friends. Obviously, now in hindsight, that's why. He knows why. And it's funny because reading that LA Times piece, and it is one of the weirdest bits of journalism ever because the journalist recounts Barry's story, but almost as if it's real. So it's just like facts of Barry's narrative, but it's all Barry's bullshit.
About his alien
about his
civilization.
alien, calling the supercomputer and, Planet Clabwell and on top of the Tropicana and all that stuff. But, the article talks about sexual assault. I mean, the language is so soft, but I mean, Barry was raping these young girls and the language back then is, talks about assault and stuff. It's like it's framed and the worst person you could imagine.
Yeah, there's almost nothing worse he could have done.
No. He had been locked up for a very long time. Before that, he'd done the same trick with someone else. And it was offending, but to the point of so much elaborate planning to get what he wanted. And I think just knowing you've been around someone that's capable of that is just a difficult thing to contend with.
Yeah, but then it also brings up the conversation on he served his time.
Yeah, so that's
20
the thing.
years and did awful things.
And I think that is the thing that while to his knowledge, Barry was a shut-in. He didn't do anything. He was living out the rest of his life. He wasn't out concocting stories again. Mm-hmm. As a little PS to this, the police did get the computer in the end. The police came in and cleared everything. He still doesn't know if there was anything on there. It could have just been woodworking videos, right. But he is also haunted by that line of, Office Space it, put a drill through it, smash it up. That's not a great line to hear.
Yeah, I don't have
context.
much. I mean, and also the stuff with the credit cards.
You're right. He was still running these awful little schemes. Like he wasn't being honest the whole time. He's opening up credit lines on his kids.
Yeah,
under his kid's name.
It's hard because their friendship was very sweet.
I've done thought exercises with friends back in New Zealand of, what's the worst thing one of us could do where we cut the friendship off? Like there's no more loyalty. It's you're dead to me. I'm never talking to you again. Is it killing someone on purpose? Is it accidentally killing someone? Is it doing something awful? What are the levels? Yeah. And this is that sort of ultimate case of that.
This is as bad as it gets with what someone can do.
And also, it's funny, that idea of Googling, it seems such an obvious thing to do, to Google people, but that Doc Mr. Organ I made about a pure, unadulterated con man, there are still people that email me going, oh my God, I've just had this encounter with this person. If they'd just Googled the name, before you go into business with anyone, before you live with someone, just Google them.
I've Googled you.
Good.
To make sure.
Good. I haven't Googled you. Actually, I'm going to do it. I've never Googled you.
You're just going to get a bunch of armchair stuff.
I think I probably will. Rob. Nice.
Can you even spell my last name?
The S and the Z always confuses me. I get your Instagram. Always go to the news tab. Related search terms: wife, podcasts, age, Rachel Wilson, armchair expert, Reddit. And images tab, that's great. I get some really beautiful photos of you from different ages. That's good. There's a young one here where you look quite wacky.
Let's see. Oh, yep.
And then news tab. News tab is where you get if they've, been in prison or assaulted.
Stories.
No, very pure, Rob.
Yeah.
Incredibly pure. Yeah, okay, we can continue this friendship. Yeah, stories where people live together and then things go off the rails, I find them always engaging, and they're sort of a warning of what to look out for, I think.
Yeah, and that no matter how long you've known someone, you never really can know someone.
No, exactly. And it's that thing of you hear all the stories of people passing away and then things coming out after their death, whether even with family members, like everyone has shit hidden away somewhere. Yeah. And that stuff can burble up at any point. Ugh. Oof. Well, look, if you want to read the LA Times piece, just Google Spaceman Barry.
You're
Fortunately, Spaceman Barry has passed away now.
You're so helpful with sending people places.
Well, it's just the most batshit article I've ever read in my entire life.
I encourage people to read it also. I plan to. But you could post it. You could post a link on your stories.
Oh no, I don't want the links.
Instead, you just Google it.
Just Google it. Honestly, Google it. It's the answer for everything.
It's the same way you are when you send people to watch your projects. Don't give them a link.
No, because people could be listening to this in South Africa. They could be listening to it in Australia. Different answers for everyone.
Yeah.
So wherever you are in life, just Google it.
Yeah.
Now look, there's a lot of feedback to last week's episode on Creed. A lot. Overwhelming.
Let's hear it.
First up, a small point from Ted. David should do an episode on American grammar, which, for the record, I think would be an incredibly boring episode, but maybe it would work, versus other countries. He said Creed were and the Mars Volta are in the episode, when Americans would say Creed was and the Mars Volta is. Did you pick up on that?
No.
Would you say Creed were the biggest band in the 90s, or would you say Creed was the biggest band?
Oh, I don't even know. I mean, both of those are just past tense.
Someone replied to that saying that's common in British English too. They refer to collective groups like companies, teams, and bands as plural, where Americans use a singular if the name is singular.
I think it's partially, though, just like what sounds best with the name. The
Completely.
Mars Volta was, and the Mars Volta were, like...
I completely agree. I would never say the Mars Volta is.
Well, the Mars Volta is going on tour with the Deftones.
Well, the Mars Volta are... I would say the Mars Volta are going on tour.
Yeah.
Anyway.
But Cedric is going on tour with the Deftones.
Yeah, singular. Yeah, a band, I always think if I'm talking to a band, a Creed is I'm talking about 4 people.
Yeah, but you're really talking about Daddy Scott.
Daddy Scott.
So that's what I mean. Like, there are weird cases of that where it
gets specific.
Like Bon Iver is really just, it's a band, but it's Justin. So you could
for
consider
a long time
it as a singer. Or St. Vincent, like Annie Clark, but St. Vincent, it's her, but...
For a very long time, I thought it was Bon Iver.
I'm still not 100% confident in the pronunciation.
I just trail off when I say it. Are you going to Bon Iver? Dave Matthews Band, you made a very comment that's very contentious where you compared Dave Matthews Band to Creed and Nickelback.
Yeah.
Someone said in all caps, Creed and Nickelback are not on the same level as Dave Matthews Band. Whereas Trisha said, as a former stand for Creed, Nickelback, and Dave Matthews Band, Rob almost took me out, but he's right, even if I can't put my finger on why. So it's split down the middle, but a lot of, and I wanted to ask you about this because Dave Matthews Band, they didn't cross over to New Zealand.
Right.
In my mind, this is what I don't know the genre. I don't know whether Dave Matthews is a person that has a band or that's just a generic name. Just give me primer notes because they didn't make the jump to New Zealand. I have no fucking clue what they are.
Yeah, I mean, that was exactly what we were just talking about. So it is Dave Matthews is the front guy. I will concede, I think they are a little different because I think Creed and Nickelback were a little bit more one-hit wonder type. Dave Matthews Band has a little more longevity. They have been around longer. They've been touring. They've been more consistently putting out music.
What genre are they?
It's kind of like jam bandy.
Oh.
Yeah.
They jam.
But not like Fish jam band.
Okay, because in my mind, I sort of had them with Fish a little bit.
No, but it is like a culture that goes and sees Dave Matthews Band. It's like college kids and like drinking and...
Okay. Tailgating
for sure, like bigger fest. It's like a I don't want to keep going back to the Gathering of the Juggalos.
No, it's a good
not,
comparison
but it's like a
point.
purer version.
No, but
of,
there's a culture around the band. It's not just the music; it's a scene and unto itself.
And then there was a big thing of, did you hear about their tour bus in Chicago dumping pee out?
So Mary Kate messaged about this.
Yeah.
Only one of those bands, when referring to Creed, Nickelback, and Dave Matthews Band, only one of those bands dumped a tour bus's worth of shit in the Chicago River, and it wasn't Nickelback or Creed.
Yeah.
So Dave Matthews Band, the tour bus, let go of their septic tanks over a river, and that showered down on a boat full of people, correct? Or is it a rumor? Do you know if it's true?
I don't know. I think that parts of that happened. I know there was a tour bus septic incident in Chicago with them.
Okay, so I feel like Dave Matthews Band probably is an episode. I've reached out to their management not talking about the shitting on the tour bus, but just saying I'm trying to learn about American culture. Dave Matthews Band is part of American culture. Can we do something?
They've been on our list before.
For a while. So actually, if anyone out there has any connections to the band, thus far they are ignoring me. So please get in touch if you have any ins, because I think they're an episode. A lot of feedback just on Creed the band. A lot of people got shocked about where the episode went in a good way, I think. They were kind of like, holy shit. I just noticed last week that the Creed cruise for 2025 has just been announced. So that's going ahead. Tickets on sale now.
Are you planning to attend
I would like to go. I have been in touch with Scott Stapp's people for an interview. They're currently assessing that. I don't know if they've listened to the episode and whether they will be into it or not. I genuinely don't know.
Yeah, they have since declined interview since listening to the episode.
I'm curious where that goes. I would like to talk to Scott Stapp. I would like to know what he is about person to person. I also, and you mentioned this after we'd recorded, I left out kind of, there was Pete Creed, then they kind of vanished. And I forgot to mention that Scott Stapp went through a lot of chaos himself. So I just wrote down a few notes on that.
The T.I. talked him out of a suicide attempt.
That's where it got to.
Yeah.
It got bleak for him. So basically they had that Dallas Cowboys halftime show on Thanksgiving, November 22nd, 2001. That was, which you should watch the video of because it's just this batshit patriotic, amazing performance.
I almost played that for Calvin instead of the music video.
Oh,
but it was a little too much.
Yeah, I think he would just too much stimulation.
Yeah.
Calvin's response, by the way, was, as in every case, golden. Okay, so that Dallas Cowboys halftime show was the peak. What followed almost felt inevitable in the world of 2000s fame, and Scott ended up hooked on Percocet, Xanax, and prednisone. Is that how you say that? Anyway, a lot of pills. In 2001, less than a year after that Dallas Cowboys show, a belligerently drunk Stapp forgot the words to his songs and stumbled off the stage for 10 minutes. 4 members of the audience sued Creed for $2 million. As Slate wrote at the time, even Creed fans had started to hate Creed. 4 years later, it was Scott Stapp's turn to file a lawsuit as he attempted to block a sex tape featuring himself, Kid Rock, and 4 women. There was a domestic violence incident, and he tried to die by suicide by jumping off a 40-foot balcony. And as you said, rapper T.I. apparently found him and reportedly saved his life, which is a crazy intersection of things.
Yeah.
And in 2014, Stapp posted a video to the band's Facebook page, and I remember watching this in New Zealand. Really unhinged. He claimed to be completely penniless and staying at a Holiday Inn, and that the IRS had frozen his bank accounts. So that was just, he had a rough time. And so I think it is kind of remarkable that he is now back in full force and so incredibly, he's fit, he looks great. But I just forgot to mention in last week's episode that he had some insane lows. Someone else wrote in, my husband dragged me and our 2 teenage daughters to the Pittsburgh Creed show, and admittedly, the eye rolls were very prevalent, especially since we're quite liberal and we're in Trumpland. However, we had a great time. The music was nostalgic, and Daddy Stapp's crotch straddling power vocals were spot on, and we had a lot of fun.
It's gotta be weird. It seems like a lot of people were surprised by that out of Creed. So I wonder how much of the audience going to the tour is surprised by it. And then, can you imagine we go to that Mars Volta show and then it turns out that they're preaching pro-Trump stuff, pro-Bible.
Wild.
It would be quite a shock. I wonder how much of the audience is experiencing that real time.
I think it's a really good question. I went on Creed Reddit And there were a couple of posts there of people being like, what the hell just happened? Because, I wasn't the only one, and it's sort of missed at the time how incredibly like Christian they were. A lot of people were just like, they're singing about love.
Yeah.
But it's like, no, it's God. And we just missed that.
I didn't necessarily associate Creed as super religious Christian band prior.
Well, in interviews, he openly stated we're not. Like, he made that really clear. So I think he did that thing in an incredibly cynical way to get both audiences, because Christians would be happy with him because he was so inoffensive. And some would, they'd get what he was singing about, whether the rest of us were just like, and I was one of the Christians at the time, and I was like, this is great. My secular friends were still loving it. Okay, more obscure feedback. Quite a few people messaged about our milk dairy kind of chat. A lot of milk fans out there. Meg said milk is delicious, especially chocolate milk. You can put peanut powder and chocolate syrup in a glass of milk and make a disgusting protein-packed treat. Amber said, I'm happy to see all the milk love. I drink chocolate milk near every morning, and it's also in my cereal. So respect to you, Amber and Meg.
Glad we got the milk lovers out there. Are you, I did forget to ask, what, are you a skim milk, 2% milk?
I'm full.
Whole milk?
Whole. Get that cream in me. Yeah. What I am looking for is, I still haven't found a Choco milk brand that I really love here. So if anyone has any suggestions, I'd love to know. I've also noticed in different states, I was in St. Louis, and they had completely different chocolate milk to what you have here in LA.
I'm not a chocolate milk guy. I'm a plain milk. In the Midwest and like Chicago, Oberweis is where I used to get my milk from, and it's in the glass jugs that are
old school.
Yeah, and delicious.
Just to clarify, you'll pour yourself a glass from time to time and just suck it up?
Not as much as I used to, but it would be like a glass of milk with dinner.
So good. It's funny. It's when you're eating out, you can't order that, can you?
No, I was never eating out.
It's a power move. If everyone around you has a beer or a wine and you just order a glass of milk, that's such a good move.
Well, I don't drink alcohol, so if instead,
I would love it if that became your thing. Can I have one tall, cool glass of dairy? One final bit of clarity. I spoke about Weet-Bix because it's a sanitarium-owned company in New Zealand, and they're Seventh-day Adventists. Someone said Weet-a-Bix is different to Weet-Bix. I didn't know this. Weet-a-Bix is the UK version, and apparently it's a delicious cereal. Weet-Bix without the A, that's the New Zealand Australian cereal, and it tastes horrific. I didn't know that. So yeah, if you're in the UK, Weet-a-Bix is apparently delicious. Weet-Bix in New Zealand, not so good. So yeah, thanks for writing in. Creed, I think, opened up a lot of people's minds to a part of America that we sometimes forget exists. And I think it's important to kind of be aware. But yeah, if you're listening to this and maybe you've recently moved into a house, just Google the people you're living with and just make sure that you know a bit of background, because I think that's a good move.
And maybe if people want to share their worst roommate stories in the comments,
love to hear. Fun. Yeah, please. Because I have no doubt that everyone has a story. It might not be Spaceman Barry level, but yeah, if you've lived with strangers, you've encountered some weird shit.
And maybe we can pick our favorites and share them on next week's episode.
Yeah, I would love that. And please go to Calvin and say, what is it like living with me? And just see what he says. I want to know like his highlight and his low light.
All right, let's see what he has to say. Calvin, have you ever had roommates before?
Yeah.
Who?
My roommate right now is Emma. I used to have Solomon. I used to have Tenny. I used to have Josie.
Roommate's someone you live with. Do you live with anyone?
Yeah.
Who?
You, Natalie, Vincent, Huxley.
What's your favorite thing about living with me?
That you're fun to live with. You get a lot of stuff for me and stuff. Sometimes you order me some food.
Anything else that makes me a good roommate?
You're kind.
What's the worst part of living with me?
I don't know. There's nothing.
Okay, bye.
Bye.